What is up, guys? This is John, aka Pokemon, and today I want to answer the question of what Pokemon typing has the worst overall Pokemon in it. Now, obviously, each Pokemon typing has their fair share of bad Pokemon, but not every typing's worst Pokemon is created equal. Druddigon has the lowest base stat total of any fully evolved or non-evolving Pokemon in the Dragon typing, and that Pokemon's base stat total is 485. Compare that to a bunch of other typings, which we will do, and it's really crazy how much more powerful some typings are than others, and I just want to go over which one is the weakest in my opinion. And in order to do that, I needed to take every single fully evolved non-legendary Pokemon, group them together by base stat total, and take the 5 weakest Pokemon in every single Pokemon typing, and then compare them all. But not only that, I made 2 groupings because obviously there are dual type Pokemon, and some very weak Pokemon were in both of the typing categories, so I have one for just typing overall, and then one for primary typing. You'll see the differences in the video. But now it's time to finally look at the typings and begin making some cuts so we can make our way to the typing with the weakest overall Pokemon. And the first cut could not be easier. Dragon typing obviously doesn't have the weakest Pokemon. The weakest Dragon typing for the mixed group and then also the primary group was Druddigon, as it's just a regular Dragon typing. No dual typing there, and the base stat total for Druddigon is 485. That is ridiculous. Definitely the strongest group of weak Pokemon of all of these. After that, it gets a little bit more surprising, as we're going to be cutting Fire, Fighting, and maybe the biggest surprise of this entire video, Ice. Now, the similarity that these 3 typings share is in both the mixed group and the primary groups, they have the same group of Pokemon. Or in the case of Ice, it's not the same Pokemon, but the one Pokemon changed has the same base stat total, so it really isn't a big difference. And they were 2, 3, and 4 behind Dragon when you average the base stat totals of the Pokemon there, with some pretty strong numbers. But going back to the list, we still have a bunch more typings we need to cut, and I decided to get rid of 5 more typings, and those would be Rock, Ground, Steel, Grass, and Fairy. Now, the thing that ties all those typings together is when you look at both lists ranked by the average base stat total, all of those typings are in the top 11 of both lists. It's weird to say top 11 instead of top 10, but top 11 allowed me to get rid of 2 other things, and if you're in the top 11, you're probably not going to be bottom 1, so I'm completely fine with that. Looking at Rock and Steel, there really isn't a lot to comment on here. They're both pretty strong just with mixed and primary typings. There's not really too much movement, nowhere close to the bottom. Looking at Ground and Grass, they're actually next to each other on both of the lists. You know, a little bit weaker than Rock and Steel, but still really strong overall, or at worst, just averagely strong types. But the most interesting typing in this grouping is without a doubt the Fairy typing, as that's number 11 on the mixed list and actually number 4 on the primary typing list. And I think that's a pretty simple thing to explain. You know, the Fairy typing is obviously the newest of all the typings, and a lot of older Pokemon gained the Fairy typing, obviously in the 6th generation. So those aren't going to be primary Fairy types, and we've only had a few generations where they could come out with primary Fairy type Pokemon. So when you look at the mixed list, the 5 Pokemon you see there are actually not primary Fairy type, and you can kind of throw those out the window. Clearly, Fairy types overall aren't super weak. Those are things that belong to other typings. And then if you look at just regular Fairy types, I mean, the weakest one here is Granbull, which is actually surprisingly, you know, a Pokemon that went from normal to Fairy. Everything else after that, pretty strong, you know, closer to 500 than 400. Really good typing overall, an easy cut from the list. And now that we've made some really good progress going through this list and eliminating typings, we can take them out one by one, and the next one is super simple with the Poison typing. It's the next one after Fairy in the mixed list, but not only that, when you look at the weak Pokemon in this list, the bottom 3 are primarily Bug type Pokemon. You can't be the weakest typing here if 3 of the 5 are a different typing, so that's an easy out. And then once you just go to the primarily Poison type Pokemon, way stronger, they shoot up the list. So this one was pretty simple. The next typing we're going to cut is the Dark typing. This one is pretty boring and pretty simple. It's in the top 10 for the mixed list. It does drop in their primary list, but it's still not even close to the weakest. So overall, pretty okay-ish and definitely not the worst. And similarly to the poison typing, when you look at Ghost in the mixed category, almost every single Pokemon there beyond Banette, which is the strongest Ghost Pokemon there, is primarily a different type Pokemon. Obviously, when you just do primarily Ghost type Pokemon, it shoots up the ranking. It has a really, really powerful group. And if you have 4 of the 5 that are primarily a different typing, there's no way you can be the weakest. So Ghost is an easy type to get out of here. And the final typing we're going to eliminate before we look at the bottom 5 typing is the electric typing. This one's kind of interesting as it actually has the same grouping for both the mixed group and the primary group. The reason I've waited so long to get rid of it is actually in the primary group, it drops all the way down to the bottom 5. It's definitely not a bottom 5 typing, especially when you look at the mixed group where it is there at number 10. Clearly there's some weaker typings that are holding some other types down, and those are the types we are going to look at now. And those 5 lucky typings are normal, water, flying, psychic, and bug. And immediately we can make a quick elimination with psychic, as it's just better than most of the rest on both lists. And the only thing it isn't better than on both lists is the flying typing. And this is a really, really interesting case that I kind of debated back and forth for a really long time. Now, when you look at flying on the mixed list, it's actually the 3rd worst typing there. And the reason for that is there are a lot of weak Pokemon that have the flying typing, but there's not many flying types that are primarily flying type. Actually, Gen 8 is the first generation that has multiple Pokemon that are primarily flying types. So when you look at the primary list, there's only 3 flying type Pokemon there, with Cramorant, Corviknight, and then Noivern, which was actually in the Gen 7 games. But it's kind of a skewed little category, but I think the big reason this is not the worst typing overall, at least with worst Pokemon, is when you do look at the flying type on the mix side, you see 3 Pokemon that are bug types there, and then 1 that is a normal type Pokemon. So clearly, weaker typings beyond flying are actually dragging it down, so it barely escapes as not the weakest overall typing, and we are left with 3 typings. And with these 3 typings, I had one big question before we can really compare the bottom 2, and that was Wishiwashi. How do I sort Wishiwashi? There's one Wishiwashi form that has over 600 base stat total and another form that has 175. If we just don't include Wishiwashi at all, it's definitely a little bit stronger than both the bug and normal typings, but once I add the Wishiwashi solo form into both of the categories, the overall base stat total drops to 347 and 349, both of those very comparable to bug and normal. I decided though, we're not going to include the Wishiwashi solo form because with those 2 forms, they're so different, you kind of have to average them together, and once you average them together, it's really not comparable. Water, you can tell, is a little bit better. There are some really bad Pokemon on this list, but you do see things like Azumarill, which is obviously way more powerful than the base stat total shows because of its awesome ability, and just compared to bug and normal, water is at least a little bit better with their weaker mons. And that obviously leaves us with 2 typings left to compare, the bad normal type Pokemon and the bad bug type Pokemon. Both of these are the same for the mixed category and the primary category, so we only need to worry about 5 Pokemon in each typing, and boy do they stink. Now, on first glance, you know, maybe the edge is to the bug typing. Obviously, the base stat totals there are a little bit higher, as the second worst bug Pokemon with Kricketune has a base stat total of 384, and that's actually higher than the 4th worst normal type Pokemon of Farfetch'd, which has a 377 base stat total. Unfortunately, regular Farfetch'd did not get an evolution. It was Galarian Farfetch'd, so regular Farfetch'd still stinks, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Looking a little bit deeper, we see 3 Pokemon that actually have a base stat total less than 300, and they very much stand out for a few different reasons. These 3 Pokemon are Ditto, Smeargle, and Shedinja, and while all of these Pokemon have really bad base stat totals, they do have something unique about them that does help make up for the really bad base stat total. And looking at the worst of the 3 with Shedinja, we immediately see a 1 in its HP stat, which is obviously going to drag things down. Now, the reason it has 1 for its HP is because it has a really good and really unique ability called Wonder Guard, and the way Wonder Guard works is this Pokemon can only be damaged by super effective moves and indirect damage. So this Pokemon would be very broken if it actually had a regular HP stat. So I don't think we can really, judge Shedinja off of the base stat total. And if we want to look at the chart without Shedinja on it, we can put the 6th weakest bug Pokemon with Beedrill, which has a 395 base stat total. And that is dramatically going to change the base stat total of the bug Pokemon, making it significantly stronger than the normal types. But obviously, it's not fair to do that for Shedinja and not look at Ditto or Smeargle, and in my opinion, Smeargle and Ditto are better Pokemon than Shedinja. Now, Ditto gets the ability Imposter, and what that means is every time you use Ditto in battle, it immediately is going to transform into whatever Pokemon is in front of it, and that will obviously change the base stat total of Ditto. Now, even if you don't want to use Imposter, the only move Ditto's going to use is Transform, so really the only thing Ditto is ever going to do is turn into a different Pokemon, so looking at its base stat total and judging it, for the normal typing as a negative, I don't think that really makes sense. So we might as well get rid of that off this list. And looking at Smeargle, while it's not as good as Ditto, at least changing its base stats, it does have the ability to learn almost any single move out there, which is really, really useful. You can really change Smeargle around, make it fit pretty much any team. It's very frustrating to face. So I don't really think the base stat total tells the whole story for either of these Pokemon. And like when we did with the bug typing, getting rid of those two, if we do replace those two with the 6th and 7th worst normal typings with Raticate and Chatot, we actually see the average base stat total for that goes up to 392.2, which is a little bit higher than the bug typing with the changes. But that's not the only knock against the bug typing, because when we go back and look at some of the mixed groups, there are actually 3 typings that are really dragged down by the bug dual typing. 3 of the 5 worst flying types are part bug, 3 of the 5 worst poison types are part bug, and 2 of the 5 worst grass types are part bug. So in conclusion, I can confidently say that the Pokemon typing with the worst overall Pokemon is without a doubt the bug typing. It was really close between bug and normal type, but bug definitely takes the cake for worst overall typing, at least in terms of its worst Pokemon, and that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have a bunch more videos coming your way, and if you enjoyed this video, let me know, and if you have any other ideas that are similar to this that you'd want to see me do, let me know. That's enough though. I'll talk to you guys in the next video, and until then, peace.